I love Charmed. I grew up with Charmed. Charmed is one of the best shows of the early 2000s. This isn't Charmed. This is a pathetic, poorly written, pandering imitation of a great show. To better explain why I think this, I'm going to compare the pilot episode of both shows. Initially, I'd sought out to compare both of the seasons as a whole, but given that it took me over 3 hours to get through the pilot episode of the new show, and then another 2 hours to get through the second, I made the choice to not waste my time any further with this terribly constructed show, and instead opted to compare the pilot to both shows. Due to the nature of Charmed, there are a few important things that you must get right in order for the show to work, those being the sisters, the powers, and the evil at which they fight. So to get this comparison started, let's look at each sister one by one and discuss their character. The original Charmed ones are Prue, Piper, and Phoebe Halliwell. The remake Charmed ones are Mel and Maggie Vera and Macy Vaughn. Something interesting you'll notice right from the start is a complete name change of the remake characters. And like me, you may be thinking that this is a different family of witches who heard about the legendary Charmed ones and want to follow in their footsteps. Well, no, these are the modern descendants of Melinda Warren, just like the original characters. Just think of this as an alternate universe where Prue, Piper, Phoebe and Paige never existed. The Earth 2 of the Charmediverse, if you will. So to start with, let's look at the younger sister of both series, Maggie Vera and Phoebe Halliwell. And since we're looking at the younger siblings first, let's take a look at the youngest show first and start off with the remake. The youngest child of the new Charmed ones is a college girl by the name of Maggie, and her whole character arc seems based around getting into a sorority. Other than that, she seems to have no discernible personality. She has no want to help people, established by ignoring desperate texts from her mother to come to her aid in what ends up being a life or death situation. Yet despite this, she continues to ignore people around her to better her chances of getting into the sorority. Her entire character is based around joining a sorority house, and nothing past that. Now let's jump back 20 years and talk about Phoebe Halliwell. Out of the three sisters, she's introduced to us last, and her life is in shambles. She's just arrived back in San Francisco after a failed look for their father, and all she has to her name is a small bag of clothes and a bike. She has no job, no home, and is moving back to the family home with her sisters Piper and Prue. Yet despite having her life in complete disrepair, she keeps a big smile on her face as a show of confidence. As a character, she is incredibly optimistic and is always open to new experiences and possibilities. We also see her want to help people by injuring herself so a couple of kids don't get hit by a car. She is a kind, caring and fun-loving person, and because her life is in such disrepair, she is open to anything, which is why it is she who will find the Book of Shadows. Next, let's take a look into the oldest sister of the original show, Prue Halliwell. Due to their mother passing away when they were all still children, Prue became the authoritative one of the sisters. And as their grandmother dies not long before the episode takes place, she is now the sole authority figure of their family. She is a strong-willed and determined person, though can be very cruel at times, and holding grudges comes very easy to her. For half of the episode she is working at an auction house, but when her boss takes complete credit for her work, leaving her with nothing to show for her endless hours on a project she was so passionate about, she quits, leaving her in the same unemployed position as both her sisters. And once she is at a point in her life where things are falling apart, she too opens up to the possibility of being a witch, though she tries to fight it for as long as she can. Prue is a fighter. She doesn't let people walk all over her, and above all she cares about her sisters more than anything. Despite holding a serious grudge against Phoebe, she still shows that she cares by bringing her extra blankets to her in her room so she doesn't get cold. A small gesture that shows her love for her sister is stronger than any grudge she might hold against her. Jumping back to the remake, things start to get tricky when comparing these characters. I could very easily compare Prue with Macy, as they are both the older sisters. However, Macy is more of a mix of Piper and Paige, the secret Force sister introduced in season 4 after they killed Prue due to behind the scenes conflicts with the actress. There is however Mel, the middle child of the three, who somewhat takes the role of Prue as the authority figure. But there is a big difference between the two. Prue is a strong character who knows what she wants and fights to achieve it. Mel is similar in that regard, but where Prue is fun to watch by just how resilient and domineering she is, Mel is unbelievably annoying. I am not exaggerating in any way when I tell you that Mel literally thinks all men are rapists. Take this scene for example at a party, where she approaches a couple making out on the sofa, and despite showing complete consent to this activity, Mel still goes to the woman, who she has never met before, and tells her she can change her mind at any time.
Hey, remember, when it comes to consent, you can change your mind at any time.
She claims rape randomly, verbally abuses a man who is trying to sympathise with her over the death of her mother, and is easily the worst character in the whole show. When one of your three main leads is the most annoying and difficult character to watch, then there is a serious problem. If Mel was intended to be the representation for the feminist and LGBTQ communities, then they really missed the mark. Arrogant and hateful is not a good look for either group. And then there is Macy. Macy is my favourite character in the remake. She is the only one of the sisters who has any sort of personality as well as having clear set goals. But despite being the best character in the show, her character history leaves the show at a huge disadvantage. Because she was abandoned by her mother and left to grow up in foster care, she has no connection with Mel or Maggie. And with the core idea of the original show being about sisterhood, the lack of any familial connection is a big issue in this new story. In the original show, whenever two of the sisters shared any screen time, you can feel the chemistry between them. In regards to the new cast, there is no chemistry between any of them. That being said, there is no chemistry to be had between Mel or Maggie either. So maybe the long lost sister act was included in the remake to make the lack of chemistry work for them instead of against. When it comes to comparing Macy with her inspiration, it does get a little tricky. As said before, she is the amalgamation of Paige and Piper. Now, I went into this video with the intent to be fair and not make any reference to later seasons of the original show. I am, however, forced to make an exception in regards to discussing the comparison with Macy. So to get it out of the way, I'm going to start the comparison by talking about Paige. Paige Matthews was an unfortunate necessity in the original show. As said before, the actress who played Prue was fired after stirring up a lot of drama behind the scenes. So after killing her off, they still needed the power of 3. Otherwise, the powers the sisters possessed would never reach their full potential. This led to the introduction of a secret Force sister, and right away we got to see her kind and thoughtful side as she worked as a social worker to try to help children in need. There was also an extra component to Paige as a witch, which made her secrecy make sense. She was only half sister to the others. Their mother had an affair with her White Lighter, which bore birth to a half witch, half White Lighter hybrid. Something which was shunned by the White Lighter elders, and so Paige was put into adoption so her and her sister would remain safe. An act that broke her mother's heart, but it was the only way. Macy, on the other hand, was sent away just because. I'm sure an explanation would appear later in the show, but the 2 episodes I've watched were so awful that I cannot bring myself to watch another one, let alone another 9. And finally, the forgotten middle child of the original 3. So forgotten in fact that she isn't even included in the remake in favour of a character who is more closer to Paige. Where Prue is the authoritative sister, Piper is much more motherlike. She is kind and gentle with Phoebe when she is at her lowest point in life, and speaks up to Prue when she is being too cruel. Piper has the best connection with either sister, and is the loving force of the 3. Looking at all 3 together, we can see they each have their own strength that make them a force to be reckoned with. Phoebe is the optimistic one, the one who brings her sisters up and always thinks of others before herself. Her power of premonition gives her the ability to see oncoming threats, as well as opportunities to help people who are not facing the imminent threat from the supernatural. Piper is the maternally loving one, playing as the loving force that drives the sisters forward, and hopefully to achieve everything they set out to do. Her power of suspended animation, or freezing as they call it, gives the sisters a small space of time to gather themselves and come up with a solution to their problems. And she can use her skills as a chef to their advantage also, by being the designated potion brewer to ensure the most efficient ways to vanquish demons without the need to rely on spells. Finally, Prue is the muscle behind the sisters, both physically and mentally, always fighting for what she believes in and always wanting her sisters to be safe. She always assesses the situation instead of running in blind. Her power of telekinesis allows her to fight off threats as they come, while her sisters seek out a way to get rid of them for good. The characters of the original show all have different strengths, and when combined together they create a power nothing can overcome, the power of 3. The sisters in the remake work a little differently. Maggie is the young and immature one, often thinking of herself first and never once seems to regard the thoughts and feelings of others around her. Ironically enough, her power is to read minds, something which is infinitely more useless than Phoebe's power, and yet she still never uses it to help anyone. Now, before I go on, I'm going to try to be nice here and look for the positives in Mel. Mel looks for threats, even when there aren't one. She sees everyone as the bad guy and never opens up to the possibility that they are trying to help. In that regard, I guess you could see her as the protective one, similar to Prue. She does seem to be the only one of the 3 who is happy and excited to be a witch, but more so she can make a statement rather than help people.
We have to unite to change the power dynamics, right the ship, change the course of humanity.
And then there is Macy. She is the smart one. As a scientist, she takes the role of potion brewer from Piper, and that's really where the comparison ends. But she does seem genuinely interested to learning about her family and connecting with her sisters. She is the telekinetic in the group, and instead of using it as a form of fighting, she instead uses it to bring herself closer to her long lost sisters. Quickly comparing them in rapid succession shows us how weaker the new characters really are to the old. Phoebe is kind and caring, Maggie is rude and selfish, Piper is the maternally loving force, Macy doesn't even know her sisters, Prue is the authoritative figure, keeping the girls in check, Mel is hateful and spiteful, and makes others feel weak to make herself feel strong. It's trying to establish them as strong characters, but it really misses the mark and makes them look so much more incompetent than the cast of the original show. From finding the Book of Shadows to getting their powers to learning that they are witches, they all accept it in their own ways. Phoebe finds the book, and after reading a passage in the front of the book, the catalyst leading to the sisters getting their powers, it is treated very ceremoniously. This is an event, something that will change their lives forever. After the lights fade, Phoebe is ready to accept her role as a witch instantly, whereas Piper and Prue are skeptical to the whole idea. Later on, when the powers begin to show themselves, they also respond to their first uses differently. Phoebe sees a potential traffic collision and she doesn't even stall. She knows what she saw was real and on instinct dives in to save them. When Prue, the biggest skeptic, first taps into her telekinetic power, it is always done outside of her field of view. It isn't until Phoebe opens her up to the idea of witchcraft does her power start to reveal itself to her where she can see, and the more she opens up to it, the more powerful she becomes. Piper discovers her powers in a fit of desperation, and despite seeing this bizarre event take place, she chooses to ignore it and goes away with her boyfriend. When her boyfriend turns out to be a warlock, she accepts her duties as a witch, and with her sisters they are able to vanquish him and access the power of 3. In the remake, the event, if you can call it that, of the sisters getting their powers is easy to miss. Instead of the house becoming illuminated in magical light, there is a single lightning strike, and that's it. It's not even really focused on, it's really just a jump scare. And that's another huge issue with the remake. In a 42-minute runtime, there is a total of 9 jump scares. The first taking place only 6 seconds into the episode, and the next taking place 14 seconds later. Would anyone care to guess how many jump scares appear in the original pilot? If you guessed 0, then you are correct. Instead, what the show does is it builds tension. If we look at the original cold open to Charmed, we get painted a very different picture to what the new one gives us. We open on a hooded figure stood outside the window to a woman's apartment. As he slowly stalks her along the outside of the glass, we see that she is a practiced witch, with the power of pyrokinesis. As she worships at her altar, we see him in the background, slowly creeping up to her, stalking ever closer with murderous intent. Before he has the chance to plunge his blade into her, she turns and is surprised to see him. She greets him like an old friend, laughing that she didn't hear him come in. The mood settles slightly, but then she and the audience are shocked as he drives his knife into her stomach. What this cold open tells us is that if a witch is not careful, she can be spotted by anyone looking into her house through a window, and that the people you are closest to might be the ones trying to hurt you. The cold open to the new show takes a different approach. We open on a jump scare of Maggie backing up against a wall, a look of fear on her face as she sneaks through the house trying not to be seen. We are led to believe she is running from an assailant. Suddenly, another jump scare as Mel turns the corner with an angry look on her face. As it turns out, Maggie stole her shoes. Really doesn't have the same impact, does it? Back to the sisters learning about their powers, we see Macy in a bar. In a fit of frustration, she telekinetically throws a bottle against the wall, resulting in her thinking she's going crazy. Then we have Maggie with other girls trying to get into the sorority. She suddenly starts being able to read their minds, making her think she's going crazy. Finally we have Mel, out for coffee with her ex-girlfriend. Suddenly she stops time and thinks she's going crazy. One unintentionally funny jump scare later and she and her sisters have been kidnapped and tied up by their white lighter. Their white lighter is a particular soft spot for me, as Leo, the white lighter of the original show, is my favourite character across all of Charmed, and the new white lighter Harry is almost as annoying as Mel. The term mansplaining is one which I absolutely hate. It is a stupid made up word that has no meaning and is often used to diminish the argument of a male who has a genuine opinion. If there were ever someone to use that term on, however, it would be Harry. Ignoring the fact that he kidnaps and ties up the women who he is in charge of protecting, he doesn't even let them speak until he finishes what he has to say, despite them having a very reasonable set of questions that he never answers.
Are there witches? How many are there?
Really, this works much better as a monologue, if you don't mind.
The inclusion of a white lighter so early also makes the new sisters look so much more incompetent than the old. Where the old charm ones discovered their witchcraft on their own, learned how to cast spells, scribe, enchant and use their powers themselves with no outside help, Harry goes on a long monologue where he explains literally everything, giving them no room to show how smart or resourceful they are. In this monologue we also get another insult to add to the growing list of atrocities to the original show. As he continues to talk the audience into a coma, he reads off their powers and how he got them. Now I am not exaggerating in any way when I tell you that the reason the new Charm ones got their powers is because Donald Trump is president. I feel like you don't believe me. Let me explain. There are three things that must happen for the power of the Charmed to be unleashed. The first being that a weak man is given a place of power. In this case it is referring to Donald Trump. And because a weak man has been given this power, then three women must be granted the most powerful supernatural abilities possible to combat the injustice. I still feel like you think I'm making this up. Here's the clip.
When the weakest of men reaches ill-gotten glory and... Oh, God, this goes on and on. The language is far too flowery for my taste, but suffice to say, it's your current president.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like Donald Trump. He is a horrible human being, and a bag of wet socks full of holes will do a better job of leading the country. But just because I don't like the Lemon Top Oompa Loompa doesn't mean that I want a random, non-political TV show to bash him in a vain attempt to seem edgy or make a statement. The original, however, had an in-universe reason for why Prue, Piper and Phoebe got their powers. Their ancestor, Melinda Warren, was a powerful witch who lived during the Salem witch trials. Where most witches were known to only have one power, Melinda had three: telekinesis, suspended animation and premonition. As she burned at the stake, she enchanted a powerful spell. A spell which would travel down her bloodline for generations to come. Her daughter was granted one of her three powers, and then her daughter was granted another. Daughter after daughter inherited a different power from Melinda's blood, and every time they were passed on to another generation, their power increased, until the day came when one of her descendants gave birth to three daughters. Each daughter was granted one of Melinda's powers each, and they would be the Charmed ones. There is no ancient prophecy with a set of signs indicating that three sisters were destined to stop evil. The stars didn't need to align, a walking bottle of spray tan didn't need to become president. No virgin sacrifice or acts of God needed. A witch who had spent her life fighting demons was burned alive, and in her final moment she enchanted a spell that would ensure her bloodline would continue her work and always stand up to fight against evil. I cannot fathom why the remake changed this. I understand that the 12-year-old who wrote it wanted to make a statement, but they had the building blocks for creating a great show. The final act of Melinda was one of desperation and duty. No great prophecy needed. It's humanising to have your characters make the choice to use their gifts to fight evil, rather than there being a prophecy to tell them that they will do it. Again, it makes the new characters look weaker than the old, in the basic fact that the old chose to fight, but the new are literally tied down and told that they will fight. This even forced the idiots who wrote this to change the reason for the sisters getting their powers. They got their powers based on their emotions and personalities. Mel is a control freak so she can stop time. Maggie is insecure so she can read minds. Macy is smart so she has telekinesis. The original, once again, works so much better in this regard. The story of Charmed is about family, so their powers being a product of their connection to their ancestors works in tangent with that theme. They changed so much in this remake it has no connection to the original show other than the name. The names of the sisters are different, the powers they receive are different, their home lives are different, the threats they face are different, the spells they cast are different, the reason that demons have started to attack them are different. In the original show, the sisters were left alone from demons because of their grandmother. Their grandmother was the most powerful living witch, and as long as she was alive, all three of them were safe. When she died, however, this allowed the demons to begin plotting ways to not only put an end to the Charmed ones, but to take their power for themselves. And their grandmother didn't die fighting off evil. She was too strong to fall in a fight and the demons knew it. They were scared of her. She died due to natural causes. She died from her age. All that was needed was for Phoebe to return home so the sisters would get their powers. And at that point the demons would kill them and take their powers. A very simple and easy cause and effect story. Why is it that the demons in the remake start attacking the sisters? It's not due to the mother protecting them. She was clearly not a strong enough witch to keep her daughters safe, simply due to the fact that she is killed by a demon. And even so, it takes over 3 months before demons start attacking the sisters. There is no rhyme or reason to it. And the demons themselves are a joke. In the pilot episode we see 4 demons. One of them is a $5 CGI White Walker, the other is made of crows, one is just a dog, and finally there is a black smoke that can possess people and turn their eyes black. Kinda like that other show of a pair of siblings fighting demons that is infinitely times better than this pathetic imitation. I cannot see anyone liking this new show. It seems to be trying anything it can to reach any audience, but in that attempt it reaches no audience. The name Charmed, the demons pulled right out of Supernatural, the magic man called Harry who teleports through disapparation rather than orbing, the White Walker, the Matrix style bullet time which I thought we stopped doing 10 years ago. It almost seems embarrassed of the original show, not even keeping the characters' names or powers. Seriously, how is mind reading more useful than seeing the future? I think the show would have been much better received if it called itself anything else, and got rid of Mel. And Harry. Other than the character of Macy, I cannot see any redeeming qualities of this show. The basic theme of sisterhood is lost in the first 20 seconds, showing an argumentative relationship between Mel and Maggie. And then Macy, who isn't even really their sister, she only shares their blood. How do you expect to have a show based on the theme of sisterhood when two of the sisters hate each other and don't even know about the third? So what about the quick fix angle to this video as suggested by the title? Well, it's pretty obvious, I think. Have the show be about the Charmed One's children. I understand that they wanted the show to be about strong women, and they can still have that. Chris and Wyatt are not the only children the sisters had. Phoebe had girls, Paige had girls. This could have been the story about them. You could have had old actors to come back and reprise their roles. I'm sure Kaylee Cuoco would love to return to the show as a mentor to the Charmed children, being that Big Bang Theory is finally ending. Just because the Charmed One stopped some of the biggest evils doesn't mean that evil has stopped altogether. When they defeated the Source, the biggest evil that there was still new threats to face and overcome for years afterwards. There will always be a fight, and there will always be someone to fight it. That is what this reboot should have been. All I can say at this point is thank you. Thank you for giving me the task of making this comparison so I can rewatch a show I grew up with. A show that helped mould me to who I am today. A show that featured average people with average lives, taking the role that fate had given them and doing what was right with it. People who had strong morals but empathetic, who didn't let people pull them down. I hope that some of the younger people who have watched the remake take a look at the original show. And instead of the immature and self-obsessed narcissist, the cruel and hateful activist, and Macy, they instead get the optimistic, the loving and the strong characters the original gave us. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it then please subscribe to White Sunset and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye everyone.